Madam Chair, you have a live mic.
Thank you. I'd like to call the February 24th Big Cypress Basin meeting to order. I'd like to ask Mr. Andy Hill to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the
Good morning and Happy New Year. This is the first meeting of the new year of the Big Cypress Basin Board. As a reminder, today's proceedings are accessible via Zoom, as well as Collier TV and the district's website. I'd like to ask the board members when speaking to make sure that you speak directly into the microphone so that you can be heard, and please use the buttons on the dais to be recognized. For those here in person, if you would like to comment on an agenda item, please complete a speaker card in the lobby and bring it up front to Mr. Troy Miller, who's seated to my right. If you're joining by Zoom, use the raise the hand feature and staff will call on you. And if you're participating via phone, *9 raises your hand and *6 mutes and unmutes your phone. Before we get into today's business, I'd like to take a moment to speak on the life and impact of Mary Ellen Hawkins, who sadly passed away last month, just a few months shy of her 100th birthday. The tremendous legacy she leaves behind should be celebrated. Mary Ellen was one of Southwest Florida's most beloved and dedicated legislators and was the major catalyst behind the founding of the Big Cypress Basin. She was a trailblazer and a driving force in a time and place where it was incredibly difficult to be an extraordinary woman. In 1974, Mary Ellen was the first woman from Southwest Florida elected to the Florida House of Representatives. While in office, she fiercely championed legislation that supported women, children, and the arts. One of her proudest accomplishments during her time in Tallahassee was the legislation that created the Big Cypress Basin. When she retired in 1994, she was the longest-serving representative from Collier County. In the years that followed, she served on the Basin Board, was a member of the Board of Directors for the Southwest Florida Land and Preservation Trust, and the Executive Committee for CREW Land and Water Trust. Mary Ellen devoted nearly half of her life to making Collier County and Southwest Florida a better place to live. For that and for so much more, we are forever grateful. With that, agenda revisions, Lisa?
There are none today, Madam Chair.
Okay, are there any abstentions from board members? We'll begin with Vice Chair Waters.
none for me, ma'am.
Mr. Hill?
None for me.
And I have none. Approval of the minutes of the October 27th Big Cypress Basin Board meeting. If there are any corrections or amendments to the minutes, if not, I'll take a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hill, second by Vice Chair Waters. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that vote's unanimous. The minutes are approved. And with that, we go to the Basin Administrator's report.
Good morning, board members. I have two things for your awareness today. The first is the $1 million payment we make to Collier County every year. And we are happy that this is our last payment to them. This is part of a settlement agreement with Collier County for the purchase of the roads in the Picayune Strand Restoration Project. It was a 20-year payment to the county, $1 million every year. This is our last one again. And as part of that, they submit a stormwater plan for our review and approval. And we've taken a look at that. It's consistent with what they've done in the past for their secondary system, and we have no issues with it. So unless you have any questions, we'll proceed with that final payment to them. Good.
Question is, what is, from the county commission standpoint, what is their feeling towards losing that revenue? That means it's $1 million coming off of their budget. Is there any potential ramifications that we should consider or be aware of? or speculate on?
They are starting their budget process now, and this is something they've been aware of that they can plan for. So I don't think that their stormwater section or their road and bridge section is going to have a problem. They know that they're going to have to pick that up.
Okay.
Anything else? Go ahead.
Okay. And then the second item is an update on our modeling project. And I've created or submitted a map here for your review, just to give you an overview of this modeling project. It's been going on for the last few years. We started this September of 2021, and it will be finished this December. So it's been covered in your budget for multiple years. It's a very large modeling effort. Primarily, we have, as you can see, the boundary area, the gray was our previous model boundary. So it has expanded to include the entire Corkscrew area, the Imperial watershed, all of the Fakahatchee State Park, all of the Picayune Strand project, and our coastal areas. It also has improved topography, and this past year, we spent $200,000 in additional survey in the Corkscrew area to improve the modeling results as we move forward with additional projects in the Corkscrew area. We also expanded the model simulation timeframe from stormwater or from flooding conditions. We included the time period from 2010 to 2020. We were able, by doing that, you pick up some droughts that we had in 2007. You pick up some more recent storms, the intensity of our more recent storms. So all of this together is just going to give us a much better modeling tool. So as we move forward with new projects, which takes us to next steps. What's next after this modeling for 3 years? We're going to put together a team of public and private partners, and we will have a kickoff meeting in January of 2024, where we're going to start looking at projects and that will fit, that we can run through this modeling tool. We can help prioritize projects. We want to also make sure is we have ideas on projects that will help, say, the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. We want to make sure that there's no unintended consequences, and that tool will help us do this. So we also plan on bringing you back an update on this modeling tool in October of this year. So just as we're wrapping it up, we'll bring you back a full presentation on it. Any questions?
I asked Lisa to give us an update on this because it's been in progress for a few years now. And as you'll recall, board members, this started when Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary reached out to me when I was first appointed to the board and asked for some help in looking at the hydrology around the swamp because of the impacts to wood stork nesting that's occurred there. As you'll recall, the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary folks and Audubon gave us a presentation. And from that, our team joined them in looking at a model. And what Lisa just updated us on is the fact that this model, to be effective and to help us work those hydrology issues, has to encompass more than just looking at the swamp. And since our last meeting, I was out in the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary with Lisa and Brad Jackson, our chief engineer, along with the entire team from Corkscrew and Audubon, to just go through and look at some of their restoration with the willow eradication, but also to talk hydrology out there. So this model is going to be very, very important to us solving some of the issues in the watershed. And we just had that new structure upgrade, right? That we had the ribbon cutting, which is also impacting this area in Bird Rookery Swamp. So
Right.
All fits together.
It does. So we've got another capital project in that area that we'll be running through and using this new model as well. So it's a help to our partners, but it's also a help to us as we continue with our capital projects.
Thank you for the update, Lisa. And I want to
Welcome.
thank your whole team for putting all the pieces together, because we have district folks and Basin folks and everybody pulling the pieces together to try to get a true picture of what is going on so that we can address solutions. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
Okay, the next item is general public comment. So we'll start with those that have signed up to speak. And again, there are two opportunities for public comment for items not on the agenda, both now and later on at the end of the meeting. Todd, is there anybody signed up?
Yeah, Madam Chair, we have one speaker here in the room and one registered on Zoom. Your first speaker is Andrea Threlkeld. She'll be followed on Zoom by Brad Cornell. Andrew, if you want to come to one of the podiums here, please start by stating your name and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Andrea Threlkeld, and a lot of you will know who I am because since June of 2019, I have sent 229 emails to the South Florida Water Management District. We bought a house on Longboat Drive, which is along the river, the canal that you guys refer to as GG1. And I came home one day to find all the trees on the north side of the canal completely gone. And it took me about 4 days to track down the fact that this was from South Florida Water Management District. We were never informed of it. Nobody told us what was going on. Just came home one day and the trees were gone. After a couple of weeks of circling around and getting nowhere, I met Lisa, who has been wonderful. And for 4 years now, these trees have been gone. And we look out at our backyard, which was once lush and green and beautiful. And now everything's just dead. All the trees that were left are all dead and dying. All the grass is dead and dying. All the animals have been displaced from their homes. And I understand what everybody is doing. It's been explained to me 1,000 times. The weir was built to control the water level through the back to the east where the estates are. We understand all that. However, my community, my neighbors have gotten together. In the past, we've had meetings with Penny Taylor. We've had meetings with several entities in the area. We've met with the Basin, directors, the workers, everyone. And the answer basically is, honestly, I've heard we're working on it, but there's nothing that's being done. And I have 2 young boys. We bought a home with trees and now everything's gone. On the north side of us is Bear's Paw. The trees are so dead and thinned out that we just look right into Bear's Paw community. I've reached out to Bear's Paw hundreds of times as well. Last week, we offered them 30 free eurekas to help plant and with the regrowth of that tree wall we call, no response from them. And just raising the concern that, again, what was once green and lush and beautiful, we look out and it's very, very heart-wrenching to see the dead, the brown, and just like, it looks like there was a fire set, honestly, and that nothing has grown back in 4 years. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I know that you and I have corresponded by email, and I appreciate you coming here today. I have personally been out there on the banks of GG1 to look at our maintenance of that flood control canal. And so I'm very aware of this, and I would like to see if maybe we can't encourage more dialogue with Bear's Paw and maybe help move that solution forward. And we'll see if you haven't had a response. I'm willing to try that anyway. Okay. You can't talk. You got to be at a microphone.
I appreciate that. And I know everybody has said they're going to help. They're going to help. I mean, they're not. I know everything takes time. But again, we're just residents. My husband grew up here. We've been here forever. All of a sudden, after 30 years, they decided to cut down trees. They explained that the reason was because the trees were blocking the weir but really the bottleneck point is not the weir, it's the road before the weir. We've gone to many meetings to try to point this out. And Bears Paul's stance in the past has been the trees that they are taking care of on their side is what they're taking care of. But what's dead and dying is the riverbank that belongs to South Florida Water Management District. And I have to say too, that a couple of years ago, they were going to come to our side of the canal to do it. And luckily we came up with a amazing compromise that they did not take down all the trees from our side. And I've done a lot of research. I've looked into a lot of what everybody does. Again, grateful and appreciative for everyone, for all the help. We're all in this to, help the environment and conserve things. But I feel like in our particular area, nobody took into consideration that people are living there. Everything I've looked at is just kind of, industrial or environmental. Like, these are our backyards. This was where I wanted to, this is where I'm building my dream home. And I mean, what once was the reason we purchased there has just been destroyed and then just left. And I know they come back out and I know they say they mow, but again, I've sent pictures of what the contractors are doing there. We've seen them smoking while they're mowing the grass. We've seen them pushing everything into the canal. I have thousands of pictures and videos. And I mean, I have made this such a commitment that my neighbors all come to me, and some of them are here today. Some of them couldn't make it. And they're all like, what's going on? What's going on? And the truth is I've almost given up because I feel like I've hit a dead end and that really nobody cares because I'm just one resident who's complaining about dead trees and dead grass in my backyard. But it's also been admitted to me in the past by people who are no longer with the Basin or with the Water Management District that they didn't pull the proper surveys and that they didn't do this right and that they didn't give the residents the proper heads up. And I know none of those employees are still with the company. I've done a lot of research, but for people to just come in and just hack and chop and then leave it. I know they tried things before, but nothing is working. And I look out every day and I mean, they have turtles, they have otters, there's now an alligator in that canal. And I can't imagine that, in today's world that we can't find some sort of way to replant, rebuild, regrowth. I mean, it's Florida. It's supposed to be green and beautiful and sunshine. And we've gone through rainy seasons and we've gone through everything and just dead, brown, dead. It's things are thinning out. And we stayed in our house during the hurricane. And so we watched everything firsthand. And I can tell everybody that they can look at pictures and they can hear stories, but we stayed in our house during the hurricane. Water came up to my thighs. And the whole thing with the weir, controlling the water level, especially with the water, is if it goes up and over the weir, then the trees blocking the weir or, somehow it just doesn't make sense to me as far as
If you
why
could
it's
wrap it
done.
up, just,
I'm done.
I appreciate
I know.
you
I've been
being-
doing this for 4 years. I'm done.
I appreciate you being here today and thank you.
Madam Chair, we have one other speaker on Zoom at this point, Brad Cornell. Mr. Cornell, you should be prompted to unmute yourself if you'll do so at this time. Waiting for Brad.
There
There you
I-
go.
yep.
Brad, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thanks very much. Madam Chair, this is Brad Cornell with Audubon Western Everglades in Audubon, Florida. And I guess I'm asking for a little bit of indulgence. You got off of the model discussion so quickly that I wanted to add one more comment on that, if I may.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that Audubon and Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary are very grateful for the collaboration that the Basin and the district have pursued with us for these several years now, and this has been really important. It's an issue that's pretty fundamental to the sustainability of the sanctuary, but as you pointed out, and Lisa Keeler also pointed out, the nature of the hydrologic problems that we're suffering are really regional issues that we're all looking for solutions. So this modeling, wider modeling project that you're pursuing is really, really important. And the time frame is never as fast as we all would like. So we're super appreciative of the improvements in the weir structure. We engaged on the water supply plan issues, and we're also pursuing the horse pen strand in Golden Gate Estates, which is nearby. Those are all elements that we can pursue now to try and other operations issues that we can pursue together to continue to try and solve these regional problems. So thank you for that continued collaboration. That's it.
Thank you, Brad.
That's all the speakers we have at this time, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Troy, for that. Then we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is a Corkscrew Regional update from Dr. Robert Lucius. Good to have you here today.
Thank you, board members. So I'm super excited to be here today because I get out a lot to do presentations about the Crew Land and Water Trust, and there's usually one question I get asked a lot, and it's a question I both love and hate. And the question is, who the heck are you folks? So I hate that because we've been around for a really long time. We were founded in 1989 as a public-private partnership, principally with the South Florida Water Management District. And so it's frustrating to get asked that question. But I also love that question because it gives me an opportunity to talk about the Crew project and tell the Crew Trust story. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here today and talk a little bit about the Crew Land and Water Trust. Thank you. So as I said, we were founded in 1989 as a public-private partnership with three principal missions in support of the Crew project, which, as you know, was established by the district in 1985 to protect and preserve the Corkscrew Regional Ecosystem Watershed, which currently has boundaries that encompass about 70,000 acres. So, of course, our principal mission from the get-go was land acquisition, and we've continued to pursue that aspect of our mission since the very beginning and until today. And I'll talk a little bit about the land acquisition piece a little bit later, but I do want to focus today on our two other missions, which are our public access and our environmental education mission, because they really lie at the heart of our partnership with the Water Management District. So I'm going to share quite a bit about what we do and how we do it. But I do want to point out, because I think it's important to recognize this, that we are a very small organization. We have 3 full-time staff, including myself. We have an education coordinator and somebody who dual hats as the communications director and volunteer coordinator. And we actually have 2 part-time staff. There's a typo on the slide. I apologize for that. We have a part-time environmental educator, and we just brought on a membership coordinator because I would be remiss if I didn't point out that our members are probably our biggest strength. We have about 350 members every year who support us. It's one of our biggest revenue streams. They serve as trustees, as volunteers, and as our ambassadors out in the community as well. We also bring in 2 to 3 environmental interns every year, principally from the Florida Gulf Coast University. We have one right now, Rory Cushman, who's working on some projects for us on our education side. And we have about 60 plus volunteers, most of which are seasonal visitors and retirees. And as you can see, they contribute almost 5,000 hours a year in free labor. So everything we do would not be possible without the volunteers that support us. And of course, we have FGCU students and Ave Maria students who come out and provide those service learning hours that, again, on top of our other volunteer hours, are vital to our operations. And we have an extremely large board, 30 members representing stakeholders from across the community, land developers, landowners, government representatives, educators, conservationists, business owners, all represented on our board. So I do want to talk very specifically, briefly about our partnership with the district. As I said, we were founded in '89, and from the very beginning, we have been very closely tied to the district. I hesitate to say that it's a unique relationship. I'm not sure if that's the case, but I certainly think it is exceedingly rare here in the state of Florida to have the kind of relationship we have with the district. Since the beginning, we have actually operated on a contractual basis with the district. Certainly for the last 23 years, we have done so. We continue to do so. We share office space with the district staff up at the Crew field station off Corkscrew Road. The Fish and Wildlife folks are also in that office. So we meet quarterly, but we also interact on a daily basis. So we help out the district on their missions and they support us on ours as well. And as you see in that last bullet, we're currently on the amendment number 5 of the most current contract. And this will be the last amendment on that contract. And so we'll have to revisit that at the end of this, the contractual period in 2025. We also work very closely with our Fish and Wildlife Commission colleagues in the office. And as I said, we have a land acquisition mission. Now, early on, we went out and we actually acquired quite a bit of land. Some of that land was eventually donated to Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, a very tiny amount we still have in our assets. But principally over the years, what we have done is we have supported Conservation Collier and Lee County's Conservation 2020, and we continue to support their efforts to acquire additional parcels either within or adjacent to the Crew project boundaries. We currently have 7 outstanding letters of support with financial commitments, 2 for Lee County, the remainder with Collier County, and that is a grand total of about 173 acres that potentially could be brought into conservation in the Crew project, most of them hopefully this fiscal year. So I do want to focus on our main missions as they relate to the district's contract with us. So one of those missions is public access and recreation. As you know, within the Crew management area, there are 4 main trail systems. There's the Crew Marsh Trails, Crew Cypress Dome Trails, Crew Flint Pen Strand, and Crew Bird Rookery Swamp. The Crew Trust provides about 75 scheduled guided hikes, wet walks, and bicycle tours every season across those 4 trail systems. Those are regularly scheduled as well as pop-up ones that we host. The public, I was just out at one last week, as a matter of fact, for 10 folks who signed up online. They're led mostly by our volunteer staff, and they're extremely important. As you know, these trail systems, particularly Bird Rookery Swamp and Flint Pen Strand, are very, very popular. We get about 20,000 folks a year to each of those trail systems. And so those scheduled hikes are a core function that we provide in terms of the recreation and public access. But we also offer private guided hikes. So, every season we provide dozens of hikes to community associations, small businesses, government staff, and elected representatives come out, and we will offer guided hikes to them. And of course, they're no charge because that's our mandate. So I would encourage the staff here, if you want to come out for one of our guided hikes, we'd love to have you. We also host geocache and earth cache events. And we really think this year that we need to work on our accessibility. We've done surveys of all the trail systems. And again, it's 40 miles of marked trails. So it's a lot of trail systems using the birdability criteria from Audubon Society. And there's a lot of things we can do to improve the access to the trails and the enjoyment factor of the trails for folks who may be mobility challenged. And so that's something that we're working on this year, focusing initially on Bird Rookery Swamp to try to get more benches out there, more picnic tables, so that we can get folks out there and they can get a little bit further off that 1,500-foot boardwalk and enjoy a little bit more in depth in Bird Rookery Swamp. Our environmental education program is the other main mission that we have. And of course, we offer everything from K through Gray. So our youth programs, the K through 12 programs, are particularly important. We've been doing a walk through a watershed for many, many years. Just in November and December, we had 594 students from Collier County Public Schools come out and do that program for us, where they learn about the watershed in ways that are appropriate for their age group. We are just wrapping up our Soil Rocks program. And again, it's all, but at this point, we've had close to 450 second graders come out and do that program. If you had the opportunity to see the Wink News coverage last week of this program. It was a great segment, and the students were just loving being out there. We also have our programs for university students. We have had close to 400 FGCU students come out for colloquium. And again, age appropriate, a little more sophisticated approach, but teaching them about the ecosystem services and the functioning of the Crew project as a whole. And again, we invite private school groups, homeschool groups, charter schools, any youth group that wants to come out, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, whatever, that we come out and we will host them and provide them a tailored experience out in the trail systems at no charge. But we also have adult programs, and we offer every year specialty topic treks. Here's an example of some of the topics that we've addressed this year. We have strolling science seminars, which are our top tier programs. And again, these are designed to be very deep dives into very specific topics. And then we have a range of member-only programs too. We have full moon hikes, sunset, sunrise hikes at the Flint Penn Strand Lakes. We are launching an Earth Night at the Marsh. It's a stargazing experience. Our intern from FGCU is putting this one together. And we launched a free student member program this year that has a number of programs specifically designed for student members where they can come out and socialize, learn about the watershed, learn about the natural communities, and hopefully explore opportunities in maybe some career paths that they hadn't previously thought about in land management or conservation or biology. But, traditionally, our programs have always been focused on seasonal visitors and retirees. They've occurred mostly during the week, and we've tried to shake it up a little bit this year because we think that, we have a lot to offer, and there's not a lot of things that are being offered out there for families. And so we have launched family guided hikes this year that are absolutely free, as well as strolling science seminars for kids. So this is a kid-size version of our adult deep dives, and these are the ones that we have offered this year. We have two upcoming ones, the Wings Over the Watershed and the Herpetology for Kids, where we bring in subject matter experts, and kids ages 8 to 13 will have the opportunity to spend a couple hours with their parents doing a very deep dive in a very specific topic. But, I do want to point out that regardless of what our program is, whether it's recreational, whether it's an education program for kids or an education program for adults, whatever the topic is, we always bring it back eventually to the Crew project and the importance of the watershed, the importance of the wetlands, and the importance of all of the ecosystem services that they provide to our communities and that are vital to, obviously, the quality of life that we enjoy here in Southwest Florida, as well as to the economic vitality of our communities. And then Nature's Peace, which is a program that we've had for about 6 years. We're getting ready to relaunch this one. And this is an opportunity at Bird Rookery Swamp where we bring folks out who are either sight challenged or have early onset Alzheimer's or dementia to come out and experience with their caregivers the outside. Again, it's limited principally to the boardwalk because of safety issues. And once you get off the boardwalk, it gets a little rough. And I was just at a focus group yesterday for the Collier community, focusing on veterans issues. And I had the opportunity to talk to Dale over at the Wounded Warrior Foundation. And we're going to hopefully expand this program to at-risk veterans as well and take them out and introduce them to Nature's Peace as well. So we have lots and lots of programs every season. This is part of our mission in support of what we do for the district. It's in our contract to provide recreational access, as well as provide that environmental education. And it has grown year after year after year. And we bring thousands and thousands of people out to the trails. And then finally, the last thing is community engagement. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. We go out into our community every week. Over the last 10 days, we have visited 4 different communities, providing presentations about the Crew project and the Crew Trust story. We were at the Everglades Seafood Festival last weekend as well. We have done lunch and learns at local businesses where we go in and we talk about a particular aspect that they're interested in about ecosystem services or watershed conservation. And we're hoping, perhaps we think we need to tell this story about Crew as a whole more. We always talk about the Crew trails, or we talk about Cork Crew Swamp Sanctuary or the conservation Collier properties, but most of our community, I think, don't know about the Crew project as a whole and the whole integrated piece and why it's so important and so vital for our community. So we're hoping to launch that next season. And then finally, we're always looking for opportunities. So anybody who wants to invite a Crew Trust staff member to come out, we'd love to come out and tell you a little bit what we have to offer. And then hopefully after that, get you out on the trails and give you a guided hike as well. So you see it and experience it firsthand. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions you have. Please
Thank you.
reach out to me.
Thank you for the excellent presentation, Dr. Lucius. Let's take some board questions.
But Lucius, I have a low level and a high level questions for you.
I like them both.
Okay, low level.
All right.
Is there any trails that are better for if you wanted to take your dog for a walk? I know there's issues for some critters like eating dogs. So.
Yeah, no, we all of our trail systems, with the exception of Bird Rookery Swamp, are you can take your leash dogs on those trails. Of course,
Okay.
yeah, Bird Rookery Swamp is a little bit more problematic because of the width of the tram right off that boardwalk and all the alligators.
Okay, high level. Your presentation today indirectly highlighted some of the attributes of the Crew lands for the community as a whole. But on your website or in other presentations, is there a focus on articulating and calculating financially the value of the Crew lands as to what it means to the community as a whole?
No, there isn't actually. And I wish there was. And this is something we've talked about internally. We've certainly talked about it at our executive committee and our trustee meetings as well. This is something that we need to do. That's a difficult number to get at. I know back in 2011, there was a great a WGCU documentary about the Crew project and Crew Trust, and they talked about the aquifer recharge and how much water is recharged annually as a result of the Crew project. But there's no number associated with that in terms, and I'm sure that number has been updated since then.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have that, and I'd love to have it, and we would certainly incorporate that into our talking points.
I'm sure the people at FGCU, there's a few professors between the water school and the real estate aspect of the business school could help you with that. And I was many years ago involved with that on the valuing the restoration of the Everglades as to what that meant. So you can use that as a template. So
Advice.
thank you.
I have a few questions for you. When you mentioned a couple of your trails receive or have 20,000 people visit a year, how does that split between seasonal and the summer use?
Yeah, well, absolutely. The weight of our seasonal, the yearly visitors are during season. So, we see the big bump. And of course, this year was a little bit off because the trails were closed in October. It starts to pick up around mid-December. It really hits its stride in January and February and March. But then, of course, during the rainy season, we see that drop off many cases because our most popular trail systems, Bird Rookery and Flint Penn Strand, many of the trails become inundated at that point. And so it really takes a hardy soul to get out there. The purple trail between Flint Penn Strand, that 6-mile trail that takes you over to Bird Rookery Swamp, is often underwater during that time frame. And so Corkscrew Marsh trails and Cypress Dome trails are generally the most trafficked during the summer months and in early fall.
And did I understand that you use volunteers to do the programs that you offer?
We certainly do. So our volunteers, many of them are the guides and the sweeps for our recreational programs. They help out with our community outreach when we do festivals and tabling events. They assist when we have our education programs, like, for example, Soil Rocks. If you had seen that Wink News segment, it featured one of our volunteers as well as one of our staff members. But they also are vital to our trail stewardship. So, of course, we work with the district folks at the Crew Field Station, and they do the big projects, right? They do the big invasive species removals. They do the big infrastructure projects. But anything that really has to do with managing those trails and the minor repairs on that infrastructure, it's us. And it's largely our volunteers who do that. And it's a bit of a challenge, I have to say, because a lot of our volunteers are older, and a lot of those trail systems are somewhat remote, and we don't really have the transportation to be able to get them out there. So you see guys with a chainsaw slung across their back riding their bike out to the far side of Bird Rookery Swamp because we don't have the transportation assets to get them out there. So it is challenging to get that done, but we couldn't do it at all without the volunteers that we have.
And how many volunteers do you have?
We have about 65 on our rolls. About 30 of those are active. And by active, I mean, 2 to 3 hours a week.
Do you know by any chance how many are Florida Master Naturalists?
Several of them are. I don't know the total number off the top of my head, but I know we have several that are Florida Master Naturalists.
Okay. Yeah, I might be interested in that number if you could share that with me
Sure, I
after
can
the
have
fact. I'd appreciate that. How do you evaluate a program? You're offering a myriad of programs. What criteria do you use to evaluate a program to know whether you offer it again the next year or you change it up and do something else and where there's more of a need, like the veterans program that you said that you're exploring? How do you evaluate a program?
It really depends on the kind of program. So for our recreational programs, it really is. Sometimes one person shows up. Sometimes, 10 people sign up or 15 people. And so we will continue to offer those programs regardless of how many people show up, because it's the service that we provide. And, there's all kinds of factors that may impinge upon whether people show up or not. But for our educational programs, and those are volunteer led. So they're going out there anyway, and they're happy to do that. For those that require staff time, our education programs. So for example, our strolling science seminars, we survey folks at the end of those to see if they met their expectations. We always solicit recommendations and suggestions from our patrons and from others on what topics they would like to see addressed the following year, because we switch those up every year. And it is a matter of finding the subject matter experts. Those generally aren't led by our staff members. We want to go out and get the best folks and bring them in, and we pay them a small stipend to do that, to come in and put those sessions together. So it's are the customers happy with what they've got, and would they like to see something else? And then, of course, with our core education programs, walk through a watershed, soil rocks, the colloquium programs, those are we do teacher trainings. Those are part of the Collier County Public Schools specialist program. And so we get feedback from them on a regular basis of whether those have met the curriculum needs for what they're doing in class, and support them appropriately. So there's lots of different methods that we use to evaluate whether the programs are meeting the needs of patrons. But at the end of the day, the most important feedback that we get is, did you enjoy it? Did you learn something from it? Was it something that you'd like to do again? And we track, which ones are most popular and which ones don't really seem to be meeting the bill. And then we'll switch it up and do something different next year.
Mm-hmm. The partnership with the district has been a valued partnership over the years. And is there anything that you need from the district?
I'm glad you asked that. Yeah, there are a number of things that we could explore, and I, as I pointed out, we have been on that amendment 5 to that same contract since 2017. So our offerings, our contributions have grown, and yet the base amount of that contract hasn't grown. That's something I'd like to explore. But in a more concrete needs, certainly we need transportation assets in order to maintain those trails. And we have an old district surplus truck. It's got 250,000 miles on it. I spend more on that truck every year than I do on gasoline to repair it, to keep it in running condition. But it's 38 miles from a field station down to Bird Rookery Swamp. So it's got some wear and tear on it. So, and we don't have any ATVs. We don't have any UTVs that we can put equipment into. Some of our trail systems are 1.5 miles, but some of them are 3 miles. Some are 6. The Bird Rookery Swamp loop is 12. And there are patrons who said, we'd like additional trails. We'd like to turn the Purple Trail that connects Flint Penn Strand to Bird Rookery into a loop in and of itself, to provide a loop for bicyclists out in that area. We'd love to do that, but we got volunteers that have a hard time getting around, and we got to get them out on those distances with chainsaws, with loppers, with weed whackers. And that's hard to do if you're walking or riding a bike. So transportation is fine. And then, of course, just one thing that we can get started on right away is we have a lot of folks that come out to Bird Rookery Swamp. If you go out there and you see who most of the folks are that go out there, they're older folks, and a lot of them, they need to sit down and rest. They want to get out there and enjoy it. And we need to get more benches out there, more picnic tables. And we want to do that starting this year, one every quarter mile, just so folks can take time to sit down and rest before they move on. And that costs money, of course. So.
Now, are you thinking of a program where somebody can sponsor a bench or something like that?
Right. We are looking at that. And that's obviously something we'll have to work out with the district. Every time we have a nameplate on something out on district land, we gotta coordinate that with the recreation section as well. So that's something we're looking into.
Mhm. Do you have this list of priorities or needs outlined somewhere?
I do, ma'am.
Okay, I'd like to see that, and we'll see if we can't start looking at that a little closer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else for Dr. Lucius? Okay, good. Thank you so much for being here today. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the fleet analysis of the electric, hybrid, and gasoline vehicles. Mr. Hill, this is something that you've been waiting for.
Yeah, it's been a few years.
No, it hasn't been that long. Good to see you today, Tom.
Good morning, Chair and board members. My name is Tom Diebold. I'm the Bureau Chief for Field Operations. One of my responsibilities overseeing fleet district-wide and for the Basin. So today what we're going to do is the team that works for me has done a lot of research. We've broken things down to get a good apples to apples comparison of a gas, a hybrid, and a fully electric vehicle of the same model. So what we did was we took a look at it and said, okay, how do we do this? We want this to be real good data, real good analysis. So we utilized the manufacturer's recommendations. We based it on a 12-year, 180,000 mile, which is the current replacement criteria for a light duty vehicle. And just kind of reviewed all of the different factors that you see in front of you. And using estimated maintenance and repair, that type of thing to get through the analysis. So we said, okay, what is it that we're going to go through? What do we want to analyze? So we took inventory of what do we have. When you talk about light duty vehicles, you can see the numbers in front of you. The half-ton pickup trucks is the workhorse for the agency as well as the Basin. These are the get it done trucks that can go anywhere, can go through high water, that type of thing. So we said, okay, great. Let's take a look at what's out there. So the district, we purchase as a government agency through negotiated government contracts. Just about every vehicle we buy is through a negotiated contract. This ensures the taxpayers are getting the best possible value for their dollar. And in this case, here in Florida, one of the most popular ones for government agencies is the Florida Sheriff's Association's Cooperative Purchasing Program. What this basically does is they go out prior to the budget year, they get bids from all the different dealers, and then it's already a negotiated price. When we want to buy an F-150, these are the dealers that have the best prices. The prices have already been bid. You're getting a very good value, a very good cost for those vehicles. So we said, okay, what's available on that for this current year, 2023? And what we found was the Ford F-150 was the truck that offered all three of the options we were interested in. So again, we took a look at, okay, what's the life cycle cost going to be? Fuel or electric is obviously one of the big ones. Maintenance costs and any minor repair costs like brakes or that type of thing, your normal run-of-the-mill stuff, nothing large like a transmission replacement or a battery replacement. So we said, okay, let's figure out this cost of getting the vehicles down the road, gas or electric. So this is, as you all probably recognize, is what you would find in the window sticker at a new vehicle on the lot. And they're required to do this by the government. So it gives you an apples to apples comparison. In this case, what you see here is the Ford F-150, 5.6 gallons per 100 miles. That's the estimate of how many gallons it will use per 100 miles. So with that, we were able to say, okay, 5.6 gallons per 100 miles, what's that cost going to be? So we took a look at what the district's paying for fuel. Okay, so we at the district, at the field station, we buy it wholesale. Okay, so that, we don't pay what we all pay at the pump. We basically pay it by we get it straight from the tanker, and that goes in our tanks at the field station. That's what we fuel with. So that price as of the 15th of January was $2.99 per gallon. So we quickly did the math. You can see the math in front of you. At the end of 12 years, your estimated energy or fuel costs for the gasoline version would be a little over $30,000. So then we said, okay, let's go next. Let's take a look at the hybrid. What does that look like? A little bit less per 100 miles. When you do the math on that, it drops to a little over $22,000 for your energy costs. Next, we took a look at the electric. Now, electric doesn't use fuel, but it uses electric, which is rated in kilowatt hours per 100 miles. So again, per 100 miles, we've got a very good comparison. So again, we're not going to be charging up at the service stations. We're going to be charging up at the field station. We're going to get the price direct from FP&L. There's no markup on those kilowatt hours. And the January bill for the field station was 10.2 cents per kilowatt hour. So again, you do the math just like we did before, and you can see your energy cost for the same 12-year, 180,000 miles would be a little under $9,000. Next, we said, okay, how are we going to figure out the maintenance? So a little bit of research, and we quickly found that the U.S. Department of Energy in 2021 put out some estimates for the different various light duty vehicles, exactly like we're looking for. And you can see what those are. On the left is your gas, on the right is your electric. And, you know, you got your gas engine, you got your usual things, spark plugs, oil changes. And to the right, you see the electric, basically the same things, couple of things that are different with the electrics, but for the most part, maintenance costs are less with the electric. So put this all together. You see on the left-hand column, that is the purchase price that I mentioned through the Florida Sheriff's Purchasing Program for this current year we're in right now, the contract that's valid. Those were the exact same truck, exact same options. The only difference was the power, whether it was gas, hybrid, or full electric. The 12-year energy or fuel cost is in the next column. The maintenance cost was derived directly because that was a cost per mile off that U.S. Department of Energy report. And it gives you your 12-year total and your potential savings for the different models compared to the gas. There is a small capital outlay that needs to go with the electric vehicle, $3,500, and that is for a level 2 charger, a reasonable charger that will recharge the truck in a reasonable amount of time. It's a no frills charger. It's a very robust basic charger that will get the job done. And that charger will last beyond that truck. It could charge another truck in between. It's kind of like a fuel pump. When, you know, at your fuel island, you don't get a new fuel pump because you get a new vehicle that moves on and that carries on. So that life expectancy would outlive the 12 years for the truck. And that's just an idea of what it looks like. If anybody has seen these electric vehicles or has one, you're probably very familiar with that. There's a lot of options, but for this analysis, we went with a basic one. So electric trucks, or electric vehicles. There's some people have had experience with them. Some people have not. There's some variables and unknowns. I think right now, when we say limited production and real life testing, we're talking about the particular F-150 Lightning model. It did just get into production this year. So they are working through some hiccups a little bit, but they're on it. And there's too much at stake for them not to get this sorted out and get it working. Durability and ability within the class, towing and heavy duty conditions, et cetera, et cetera. There's a few concerns with them. They're a new technology, and I think it's only human nature for people to have some of those concerns, but we didn't find anything that was that earth shattering or alarming that would cause concern for pause. One of the big items, especially here in Southwest Florida following Hurricane Ian, was the vehicle fires from the saltwater flooding. And what we found was when a vehicle's flooded, after it begins to dry out, the salt forms a bridge and basically creates a short circuit within the battery cells. And it creates heat, and then it turns into a self-heating situation. It's a very hot fire, requires a lot of water to cool it down and put it out. Again, it's a new technology. The fire departments are figuring this out. I know the chief CFO, Jimmy Petronas, has been involved He's been on it. He's sending letters to some of the car manufacturers trying to get more information. Again, something that will be figured out in time here in the near future, in my opinion. So let's talk about the advantages. Electric vehicle or truck. Obviously the zero emissions, as you saw in the analysis, there's the potential for some real significant fuel savings. Electric is usually a lot more stable. We all see it. You go to the pump, fill up your vehicle, that price is all over the place. You get your FP&L bill, it's pretty solid. It varies a little bit. We looked at our bill at the field station. It was 10.3, 9.9. It was pretty consistent. And the industry is moving to at least partial electric, if not full electric. A lot of fleets, whether they're private or public sector, are beginning to move in that direction. So that is coming. And with that, based on the analysis, the recommendation is to try to figure out how to fund one of these in the next budget year and see if we can get an order in. Ordering is tight right now. Not just with electric vehicles, but just vehicles in general. The industry is in a state that it hasn't seen in a while, but it is working through it. Recommendation is let's try to get one ordered. We may be 18, 24 months before we would see one anyways. And with that, I'll take any questions or discussion.
Questions for Tom?
Tom, thank you. It was very good analysis, by the way, for an accounting guy that the comparison was well done. And from a practical standpoint, as somebody who's driven an electric vehicle for about 60,000 miles, I think you're in the ballpark in terms of the savings that I can see on my phone on the Tesla app. Does a calculation for me on my fuel savings versus a similar gas powered vehicle. The first thing, Madam Chair, I think the board members should, before we move forward with this, should test out one of these F-150 Lightnings over a weekend and tow in the boat to make sure that it's suitable for the conditions. So when it does come down to the point of purchasing, are you going to consider some of the other pickup trucks, such as the Rivian, which is now available? The Tesla Cybertruck is hoped to be available this year.
Well, that's a possibility if they become available on any of these government contracts. When we checked this year, the only pickup was the F-150. If we wanted to do one of those other ones, we would be into a solicitation and bid process.
Okay.
But we all know there's more coming. Last year, that Lightning was not on the sheriff's contract. This year it was. They've already closed orders. So we don't know what we will see. I'm sure the F-150 will be on there. I know the GM has the Silverado coming out. We could see that next year. So there's a potential for some different options in the coming year or two on that front. It's only a matter of time before those options are in front of us.
The other thing is, by the way, for the sedans, this is just and I see this in different evidence that I look at, the Tesla inventory of available vehicles is, from being a wait for months, is now a wait for days. And the prices that I was speaking with a new neighbor that just got a Model 3 in the last couple of weeks. He couldn't believe, I think he paid a discount to list price. So there is some opportunities that you may need to pursue outside of the sheriff's contract. And I don't know if that violates a ton of rules, but there is some opportunity there. And then just one thing, which is more of a public service a comment, that Tesla is renting Tesla vehicle, or Hertz is renting Tesla vehicles at a significant discount to gas vehicles. For people are hesitant to rent them. So the savings can be incredible there. About half my business partners rented a Tesla for a trip at half the cost of a gas vehicle. So good way to get started. And that may be something for the district to consider too, for people to get used to it. It is a difference. It is significantly different that you'll never go back to driving a gas vehicle. So renting a vehicle for a weekend or for a trip may be something to consider. Right, Lisa?
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Vice Chair Waters.
Just no questions really, just comments. Thank you for how you put that all together. I thought the way it was compared was very well done, and I was a little skeptical going in that there would be the savings, but just the way it's all laid out, I think we will see the savings that you've seen, and frankly, it's probably pretty conservative because I think what we're talking about would assume that gas prices go up at the same rate as electric prices, which probably is not going to be the case. So I think it makes sense to go forward and the next truck we order, do it as a electric, and see if it works for us or not. And then if it does work as well and we save as much as we think, we can start to transition the fleet that direction. So just a thank you more than anything else.
Thank you. Well,
Yes, thank you. I echo those comments. The way you put this presentation together, Tom, was excellent. And I shared that with you before. I think that from my perspective, in looking at we've got a letter in our packet, board members, from Chief Financial Officer Petronas. And he's writing it to the executive director for the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. I appreciate the copy of this letter. And I think that while one vehicle to test it is important, we've got to appreciate the fact that water is our business. We're in the flood protection, response to hurricanes, protection of people and property, along with our other missions of water supply, and of course, protecting natural systems. And in this letter, the second paragraph is really eye-opening. And I know that in my community, I saw this, with members who had electric vehicles ignite from the very salt water that we talked about. But in this letter, it talks about the need for guidance due to the fact that, on October 6th, I joined North Collier Fire Rescue to assess response activities related to Hurricane Ian and saw with my own eyes an EV continuously ignite and continually reignite as fire teams doused the vehicle with tens of thousands of gallons of water. And subsequently, I was informed by the fire department that the vehicle once again reignited when it was loaded onto the tow truck. So I think that Hurricane Ian surfaced issues that we would not have seen had we not had electric vehicles submerged in salt water. And so this response to this letter, I hope you'll update this board, keep us updated if there is a response that comes back from the executive director from the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration to his concerns. I think that will be very, very important. But I think since we're a year to a year and a half away, I would think that this might get a response by then. And I don't want to say, let's not move forward as well in testing this, but I do think that this is important since we're in the business of water and responding to emergencies with hurricanes.
I definitely keep you updated if I see any responses. We've been checking his website fairly regularly, so we'll continue to do that. And if we see anything, we'll let you know.
Yeah, if nothing else, they'll address the problem, do something to address the problem. But then maybe we're unique in the fact that we would get submerged by salt water, right? Being here in Florida, where other states might not have that same issue. But I just think that that's something that I don't want to see us overlook.
Agreed.
I think it should be a policy that you keep vehicles away from water. They don't float good. And I think the same of, for gas vehicles, they got wet. They're useless. So I think that's probably a good lesson that people underestimated this past storm and getting vehicles the heck out of harm's way.
Yeah, that's good. But I don't know. Maybe there is something to be said for the combustible nature of a battery that gets submerged, and maybe that's the thing. I'm not saying I'm against the idea. It's just a concern because I think a lot of people were surprised when they saw these vehicles ignite. I don't think anybody expected it.
And we also, we don't get attention to combustion engine vehicles that may have ignited as well. We just pass that by and that doesn't get any media attention. So bottom line is we got to keep vehicles out of the water. I think,
Well, then that's a concern for us being in the water business.
yeah, I'm sure we'll get a report on whether we had any vehicles in the canal lately.
All right. So I think you've got the
you.
board's direction here and we can kind of look for that information from you as well as what you propose from what's on the contract in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consideration of the fiscal year 22-23 regional partnership projects. And we have Sean Murphy presenting to us on this topic, and he's remote today. So go ahead, Sean.
Hey, good afternoon, board members. My name is Sean Murphy, and I'm a water manager for the Big Cypress Basin. I'm pleased to present before the board today 2 restoration projects for your consideration. The first project for consideration is the Naples Bay Oyster Habitat Restoration Project. Prior to 1950, go back to the previous slide. Thank you. Prior to 1950, Naples Bay had approximately 50 acres of oyster reef habitat, and a 2006 survey showed that the habitat was reduced to only 12 acres. Since 1950, Naples Bay has lost 90% of its seagrass beds, 80% of its oyster reefs, and 70% of its mangrove wetlands due to development, dredging for navigation, and increases to the watershed area to Naples Bay, all which affect our water quality. Today, Naples Bay has been designated an impaired water body by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection based on the impaired water rule. Next slide. 3 oyster reef restoration sites within the city of Naples have been designed and fully permitted with a total restoration footprint of 5 acres or 4 football fields. Construction of sites 1 and 3 have been completed as of today, and the city of Naples is requesting partnership funding for fiscal year 2023 to complete site 2. The restoration project for site 2 will create 10 oyster reefs at Haldeman Creek using natural limestone rock and shell totaling 9,244 square feet, all within a 1.4 acre restoration area footprint. And it's approximately 1 football field. So you can see the site 2 with the star. The project anticipated start date will commence on March or April of this year and take approximately 2 months to complete. Next slide, please. Click. 1 click. There you go. Oyster reef communities form the base of an estuarine food chain, which provides forage for many commercially and recreationally important fish and shellfish species in Florida, including gray snapper, snook, sheepshead, grouper, red drum, and stone crab. Oysters are filter feeders and thus play an important role in improving water quality and clarity in an estuary. Oysters filter algae and nutrients from the water, and 1 oyster is capable of filtering 50 gallons of water each day, creating less turbid water. Clear water allows greater sunlight penetration, which can lead to the expansion of deeper growing aquatic vegetation, which includes seagrass beds and important fisheries nursery habitat. Oyster reef structure will also provide shoreline resiliency, erosion protection, and wave dampening, which will benefit adjacent mangrove wetland areas that provide habitat for thousands of species of aquatic plants and animals. Monitoring for the success of this project will be for 1 year, and the project performance will include the reef area, the reef height, oyster density, and size. I've included a before and after of 10 eastern oysters filtering water in a controlled environment after approximately 1 hour. As you can see, the water on the left after 59 minutes is significantly more clear. We're recommending for the consideration of funding of $110,000 of the eligible project cost of $344,000, or 32% of the eligible cost for the project, whichever is less. Next slide, please. The second project for consideration is the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary Ecosystem Restoration Project. The Big Cypress Basin Regional Partnership Program has already provided funding for 400 acres of willow and other woody vegetation removal. Audubon is planning to restore an additional 200 acres of marsh and prairie wetlands by contracting with a land management company. This project will be conducted during the dry season, typically beginning in May. However, conditions depend on sufficiently dry conditions, and the start date may vary. Next slide. Click. The goal of this project is to restore diverse wetland habitat that can support waterfowl and wading birds through the removal of woody native vegetation. Audubon's three-step restoration strategy includes mechanical mulching of the woody vegetation, treating non-native and other undesirable plants trying to reestablish, and prescribed burns. This project will also be monitored for 1 year and require spray spot treatments for any willow or other woody native vegetation, and results will be presented the following year. And click. Oh, go back. Okay. This is a photo of what the mechanical harvesting looks like. This is a skid steer with a rotary cutter attachment, removing dense vegetation from the sanctuary. And we're also recommending consideration of funding for $140,000 or 32% of the eligible cost of this project, which is currently $436,200, or whichever is less. Next slide, please. In summary, we're requesting funding for the 2 restoration projects, which will cover $110,000 for the city of Naples, or 32% of the eligible cost of the project, whichever is less. And for Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, we're requesting $140,000 and 32% of the eligible cost of that project, also, whichever is less. Next slide. Any questions? And then go back 1 slide, please.
All right, thank you, Sean. Questions by the board members? Any questions for Sean on these regional projects?
No, I'm good. They both build on things we've seen before, so I'm happy with both of them.
Great.
I think these presentations speak for themselves. Very well done.
Yes, and I appreciate that as well. And having been out to Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary to see some of the work with our previous regional projects that we've supported with that, restoration of the habitat, it's really, really benefiting that entire system. I'd encourage you to take a field trip with the folks from Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary if you have time, and see some of those results, because they're really, really good. Are there any public comment on this?
No, ma'am, not at this point.
Okay, so with that, I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve this funding for these cost share agreements.
I'll move the motion for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, and all in favor, say aye. Aye, all unanimous. Okay, thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the next item is the Big Cypress Basin budget 2023-2024 preliminary budget. We're here with Candy to start the process this year.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members. Today's presentation, I'm going to walk through the milestones, which was the calendar, the budget development calendar, as well as a brief review of the preliminary budget, the Basin's budget, and then go into the next steps of what to expect over the upcoming months. So the process starts in September. So if you recall, you end the process in August with your final approval of the millage and budget. And then we start in September by working with your basin administrator and various departments by using the financial forecast for the upcoming year, and determine if there are any changes or anything that we foresee that is upcoming that we need to address for the preliminary timeframe. We then submit a budget statutorily. It is required to submit a budget by January 15th. This year it was January 17th because of the holidays. So we submitted a draft, a preliminary budget for fiscal year 23-24 for the South Florida Water Management District, which included the Basin's budget, to the legislature and the governor. March 1, any comments that the legislature has pertaining to our preliminary budget are due March 1st. By March 15th, if we do receive comments by March 15th, we are to respond either prior to or by March 15th in writing to those comments. March 7th through the 5th is a legislative session. So the session starts March 7th. And then April timeframe, we have potentially a plan to bring the capital program to the Basin Board for discussion, which will help us in fine tuning the capital plan before the July tentative budget discussion. In July, we come back July 10th to discuss the proposed millage rate and tentative budget. July 13th, then get take the millage rates and the budget to the district board. August 1, the next statutory deadline that we must submit a tentative budget to the governor for review and the legislature for review. Back August 25th for the final millage and budget. So moving on to the actual numbers aspect of your budget, the preliminary budget for fiscal year 23-24 is $13,977,434. It is a 3.4% reduction in comparison to the 23 adopted budget that was set in August by the Basin Board. The reason for the decrease is, as your Basin administrator mentioned during her report, the $1 million MOU to Collier County is now no longer required. Therefore, it's not in year 24 and moving forward budget. Due to that $1 million coming out of your budget, your revenue sources, the usage of your fund balance, your cash balances versus your recurring funds, that use of revenue decreased in the same amount to have a balanced budget. As you know, we're required to have a balanced budget. Revenue sources. So the revenue sources that make up your budget are ad valorem taxes being the largest portion of revenue coming in to fund the Basin's costs. That is estimated to be $11.6 million. It is a small, an increase due to about a 1% projected growth in new construction. Right now, we used a report from EDR, which are your economists for the state of Florida. They put out reports on growth across the different counties in the state of Florida, and they have various impacts or growths for tax bases in each of the counties, and we went with their conservative approach of about a 1% growth for new construction. Fund balance again is your cash balances. You have a $2 million economic stabilization fund, and we're using about $165,000 of your cash to balance your budget to offset your regional partnerships projects. The $2 million remains untouched. As you know, Hurricane Ian, we were able to use some savings from fiscal year 22 to cover those expenses that the Basin needed to cover for Hurricane Ian. We had some savings and contractual savings that we were able to use to not have to use your reserves. And your reserves, if you do use your reserves, you have to pay it back within 3 years, according to policy. The remaining revenues is a lease that we have leasing out space. as well as investment earnings, right-of-way permit fees, and sale of scrap metal, and that's about $149,000. Expenditures, so the planned uses of those revenues, the capital program being the largest usage of those revenues, is coupled with the support of the staff who oversee and support the program, is about $5.4 million. There are a few new projects that were line itemed out to start in fiscal year 24, the Corkscrew Canal Headwater Improvements Project, as well as the Henderson Creek Replacement Project. Land Stewardship, which is your crew budget at about $409,000, the Service Center and facilities costs, flood control operations, as well as mentioned again, your economic stabilization and your partnerships. So comparing the revenues to preliminary to the adopted, you see that, again, as mentioned earlier, ad valorem taxes being the largest portion of the revenue, it stands at 83%. Fund balance is a reduction, as mentioned before, going from 2.8 to $2.1 million. The rest of the revenue sources remain very steady. So where the money goes. Again, a comparison to the adopted budget. The significant changes that you see is within the capital program. Again, that's an increase of about $700,000 due to the new projects that I'd mentioned coming on. And the partnerships, a small reduction for groundwater and stormwater monitoring. So the next steps, your staff will, from now until July, continue to refine the basin budget. The areas that we expect to see changes again is capital, fleet, staff allocations, as well as we'll have audited balances. We'll have your fund balance, as well as updates and revenues. And there'll be changes, as mentioned, from fleet, from the discussions today, and then April from whatever discussions come out of the capital program discussions. And that concludes the presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Heater. That's really sets us up well for our budget discussions for the coming year. So thank you very, very much. Is there any questions for Candy from the board?
On the tower project, 4 million or whatever it was in that 2024. I know I'm looking out another year. That's the big item, I believe. And what's the time and dollars that we should allocate for that project?
So right now we have the $2 million that's allocated for the project. I believe there is discussion that there is going to be an increase before your tentative budget by another $1 million.
Okay. Now, is that a timing issue or is that a cost issue? And what's the full cost of the tower project?
Right now, we're looking at between $7 and $8 million.
Yeah. So that's what I was wondering about the out years.
Yes,
That's
right. So I think a large chunk of that is going to hit in your 24 budget.
Yeah.
Construction. We're hoping to put that out for bid this summer
Okay.
and get started on that as we start the fiscal year 24. We'll wrap up construction in 25, and then the last year in 26 is the dishes and getting it all set up to go.
Okay. I know that's the big variable factor. Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
That's the big one that's out there. Any other questions from the board? Dan? Okay, is there any public comment?
No, ma'am, not at this time.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Let's go ahead and take a quick 10-minute break and come back here at 12:32. course, you had to be all the way to the back, right?
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have a live mic.
Thank you, Ms. Keeler, and we'll go ahead and resume our meeting. And we'll pick up with board comment. So we'll start with you, Vice Chair Waters. Any comments to share with the fellow board members here?
No, nothing for me today. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Hill?
None, I made mine real time.
Okay, I've got a few things just to share with you. As you know, this is a new meeting time for us. It's a little earlier than our previous time, so the staff has been very, very generous and very, very nice, and they've brought some snacks for us in case we need to take a little brief break for lunch. Hopefully, you can grab something, and if that's something that you feel like you need to do. I don't think we need to take a lunch break, but I'll leave that up to the board to decide. Do you feel that that's necessary?
Forward.
Okay, so that's good. All right, then we'll plan to do that from now on, then just take a short break, or you can get up and grab something, and we appreciate everything that you do, Aaron, and the whole team here for us. Thank you so much. I wanted to let you know, since our last meeting, I attended the Southwest Florida Resiliency and Community Summit. It was a well-attended event. It was held at Arthrex, and there were about 250 people in attendance there. And I believe, Mr. Hill, you had a chance to attend, it was a great event for our community. I've already mentioned the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary Tour that we took with the Basin team, and it was very informative. And I wanted to thank you for the sharing in the ribbon cutting for that upgrade to the cork structure, which is going to serve us benefits now and in the future. And on a district-wide note, yesterday I had the days are a blur, day before Wednesday, I had the opportunity to go out to the Everglades agricultural area for the actual groundbreaking for the EAA reservoir, which was a huge event for many, many folks who have worked many, many years to bring us to this point. And it was very, very exciting. That reservoir, if you walked around the perimeter on the berm, is 17 square miles, or 17 miles walking around the perimeter of that. So that's quite a large area. So it was a great event, and I just wanted to share that with you if you hadn't already heard. With that, let's move on to our technical reports. And the first report was going to be the field station and Andrew Wolf.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Wolf, and I'm the superintendent of the Big Cypress Basin Field Station. And I'm here to give you an update on our maintenance activities since our last meeting and give you a 3-month look ahead. As usual, we're still battling vegetation. Seems like every presentation I do has vegetation in it. On the left, the conver boat is in Henderson Canal, cutting vegetation with Humberto operating it. On the right is the trash truck picking up the vegetation after it's been set on the bank. It seems like a never-ending battle, but we have to keep up with it to keep the canals clean. This time of year, we do a lot of preventative maintenance to get ready for the next wet season. On the left is Willie getting some debris out of the gate at a structure, and on the right is Mikkel doing working on a stilling well. Making sure it's operating correctly. And on Henderson Canal, down near Henderson 1, we cleared some right of way down there to have better access for maintenance. There's is Mako on the skid steer, clearing the area so we can get in and do maintenance easier. Also this time of year, we do washouts. On the left, we're installing a maintenance access point to one of our canals so we can get our boats in there easier. On the right is fixing a washout up on Cork Canal. Our mowing contractor, which mows 5 times a year, came across 3 pythons on Henderson Canal. The one was where the picture on the left is down near Verona Walk. The 2 other ones were north up by, I guess it'd be the old Crackling Jack's restaurant.
they're clearing woods there, and I think it kind of ran them out into our canal. But they were between almost 7 feet and 9 feet between the three. This time of year, we do SIP inspections. Every 5 years, our structures are inspected. We have engineers come and do a above water inspection of a detailed inspection of each structure. We've done 17 so far this year. What this does is it gives another view of what our condition of our structures are in. And they document every deficiency down to any concrete cracks, rusted bolts, anything like that. And then they give us a report and we fix it, or they at least monitor it for the next report that comes out. And then underwater, we have hired divers, which on the left, and they go underwater to check for any cracks, any rusted metal, see the condition of the canal. And this is very important to keep these structures operational during storm season, because we know exactly what's going on even underwater. So it's a very important inspection program. This happens once every 5 years for each structure. We also attended a job fair in Immokalee in December. Paul Classy, our supervisor, and Paula, our business management analyst, did this on a Saturday, just to get the word out that we have openings at the water management and to hand out items to show what the water management does. It's very successful. Had a lot of people attend it. And also, we had a job fair at the field station yesterday. We have 6 openings at the field station, and we think we've got 4 candidates for 4 of them. So it was very successful. And our next meeting, I'll kind of update you to see how many made it through the process and actually got hired. But it looks like it was a success right now. In the 3-month look ahead, we're doing 2 bank restorations on Faka Union Canal, which I'll update you on the next meeting. Structure maintenance, just continue preventive maintenance and continue with dry season AVOs or operation orders. For the CERP program, the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Project, we also did SIP inspections at the Miller and Merritt pump station. Again, engineers check everything above water, and then as you see on the picture, divers go in upstream and downstream of the pump station to check for any cracks in the concrete or any deficiencies to be noted. It's all videotaped underwater, so they know in 5 years, if they go back, they can tell if the issue has gotten worse or if there's a new issue underwater. At Merritt Canal, they had to remove, I believe it was 23 alligators before they could go diving. So they just moved them over to the Faka Canal. So it wasn't a big operation, but the diver was very happy they did this. We did dismantle one of the pumps to replace the pump shaft at Merritt Pump Station. This is a shot of the intake being dried out. The intake of the pump needed some work, so we sent it up to Tampa, and they're rebuilding the intake. It just had some wear on the diffuser vanes, and we'll get it back and probably have it installed before our next meeting, but I'll give you an update on our next meeting on that. So our 3-month look ahead, respond to dry season orders. We're going to install the new pump shaft at Merritt, and we're going to be removing woody vegetation on the spreader basins at Faka and Miller. And what this is the palms get so thick in the spreader basin that it'll divert the water and it won't spread out evenly. So we're going to remove just the woody vegetation, and that should be done within the next 2 months. And then one thing that happened in December, 7 members of our field station were nominated for Team of the Month and won the award. They were in front of the governing board in West Palm Beach. One person couldn't make it, which was from Miami, Henry Bowman. Miami Field Station sent over a towboat, and we used that for a Miller Canal vegetation removal project, and that's what the award was for. So I'm very proud of the team and everyone at the field station. And with that, any questions?
I have a question,
Sure.
Andrew. How are you going to remove the woody vegetation in the spreader basin?
It'll be grinding the trees
So you'll actually grind them in place?
in place.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Any questions for Andrew from the board? Good, good. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. All right, our next technical report is the water conditions report with Brad Jackson.
All right. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members. Again, Brad Jackson here, your basin engineer, talk about the water conditions since last October. So like I normally do, I'll kind of walk through a little bit of history of what's happened in the past. Right now, this is our first meeting of the year, so we've got 2022 rainfall summary up here on the screen. Overall, it was a wet year, wetter than normal. We had about 113% of average throughout the basin. Most of that fell obviously within the wet season, and it wasn't all uniformly spread around. On the right side of the screen, you can see which basin, pick your favorite basin that got the most rainfall. Golden Gate, Maine, Henderson Creek got upwards of 70 something plus inches. It's a far cry from the normal 55, 56 that you normally get. So those averages, while less than what we got in 2017, they're ranking up there. So it was definitely a wetter year for us, at least during the wet season. So starting off back up here, back towards November, the highlight in November was Hurricane Nicole. We didn't really have any effects here, but we did have some heavier rainfall at the northern bit of the basin, as you can see on the right side of the screen, the red colors towards the northern part of the OK Slough and Trafford watersheds. Other than that, again, below average rainfall for us throughout the basin. Again, fast forward December, January, two fairly unimpressive months for rainfall, both below average. We did have some heavier rainfall in the Fakahatchee Strand and Fak Union in December from a cold front, but mostly speaking, we were well below average for both of those months. January was only half of an inch basin wide, so really nothing to write home about as far as rainfall. You're seeing a pattern here. It is dry season. We've got February here again. It's even drier this month than it was in the previous months. So we've only had about 1/10 of an inch of rain, which is about 5% of what we should get this month. So we've been consistently dry since the Hurricane Ian passed. And so we've had several months of that continuing trend. So talking about how much water we've had, this will transition now, talk about just the water year, ignore last dry season, a year ago. Now we'll kind of draw a line at the May 1st date last year and see where we are going, where we've been, when the rain fell, and how we were looking as far as wet season versus dry season. So as we normally have, we've got our average of 118% over the whole water year, but it makes a difference on when that rain falls over the basin and not just the total average. So if you look just at wet season, we've had 120%, that May to end of September timeframe, almost 9 inches extra water. Since then, October through now, we've had not even 60% of normal. So all of the excess rain that fell during the wet season, the wetlands were full, everything was full at that point in time, though a lot of the excess water was released out of the system, which I'll talk about in a minute, but we try to hold on to that dry season water that we have. And right now we've just been so dry, it's 60% of normal. So it's definitely, any of that surplus has pretty much been used up at this point and is no longer available to us. So that's how much rain we have, but what does it look like on the ground? What our water levels look like throughout the system? On the left, we did on the early February, on the 5th, we took a look at the canal levels, compared them to the historical period of record for each of those canal segments. If you see blues, blacks, those are above average. If you see any oranges or reds, and you're way below average for that time. So overall, I said we had 58% of the rainfall. On the left side, we're well above average as far as how much water is inside the system with the greens and the blues. But there's a limit to how much, that talks about how well the water control structures work, how much water we can hold back by holding those water levels higher. But there's a limit on how much those can do when everything gets warmer and that you see that normal dry season recession start to happen. So now we reran the numbers again just 20 days later, and a lot of those blues and blacks have now changed to much lower. You see oranges, you see greens in certain places. There's not as much high water everywhere inside the canal. This isn't because water is leaving the system through our water control structures. It's just water use. ET picks up, and just the water use out of the system. So then there's no input of extra water that we have to use. So that's interesting to point out here on how fast that can happen in just 20 days of no rainfall and how warm it's been. And then I'll look at this real quickly here also with as dry as it's been. I mean, they did yesterday that we've got a moderate drought for most of the basin at this point. And we would expect this if the conditions continue to get worse or drier. But overall, 58% of the rainfall, and we're still mostly average or better for his water levels. So the canals and the water control structures are doing their job holding the water back. So I'll transition a little bit now, talk a little bit about Corkscrew Canal operational improvements we've done. So this is our old Cork 2 structure. This is what it was before we had the ribbon. There was a ribbon cutting a couple weeks ago. This is the one that predated that structure. So you can see the canal and the control structure is very small in its capacity and how much water could actually move or hold back. The water would overtop the road routinely, and we wouldn't have the flood control that we need to have. If you fast forward to today, just a few weeks ago, we've got the upgraded water control structure now. We've got remote operations and everything's online and ready to go. So we've got more control and better flood control at this particular structure. So to then kind of talk about what does that mean that we have a little bit better control? How can we demonstrate that a little bit? So to orient everyone, the yellow boundary is kind of the overall crew, the natural watershed. It's not perfect boundary, but it's rough. And you've got the arrows that kind of delineate approximately where the water is going to flow and how it flows out of there. There's several outlets. It's not just Cork 2. You've got many different canals that stop at that watershed. You've got other outlets, other culverts that aren't shown on here, but these are the major ones. So it's not just the one that I'm going to talk about here at Cork 2. I'll zoom in a little bit here. This is the bird rookery trail that was discussed earlier. The boardwalk comes out towards these lakes and goes north. Our Cork 2 structure is right here where I'm circling with the mouse. And then that just kind of gives you a zoomed in perspective on what this looks like. And then the canal that we have actually stops at this blue line. It doesn't progress any further north than that. So here I'll spend a little bit of time talking about what all the lines on this graph mean and try to explain what the water level is, how it compares to some key indicators around it. So if you look at the orange line, that's the approximate road elevation, and you see the roads over here in the same orange color. So that's about the height of the roads in that location. The blue and purple lines, that's the water level inside the canal. At this one location. That's just at the canal spot itself. The blue, highlighted blue, that's our operational range by permit that we have to hold our water levels within. So what I'm trying to show here is how close the road elevation is to the top of that operational band. It's only a little over a foot that you have to work between the top of the road and the actual operational band. So there's not a whole lot of wiggle room there. In addition to that, I wanted to highlight the kind of some adjacent wetlands and this kind of green blob over here to the right of this north-south road. I just picked a low elevation in that area, and that's about what the elevation is inside the wetlands at the ground level. And that lays right inside of our operational band, but it's not too far from the road elevation either. So there's some competing things going on here. During the wet season, these wetlands are full. There's excess water moving to the canal. So we want to be able to operate this towards, you see the purple lines here in the middle of the blue range, the blue band range. As we exit the wet season, we want to be able to hold that water. Those wetlands are full. We don't want it to flow into the canal any longer, or at least slow it down. And so as we move here, you look at October, November, that purple line then starts to cross this wetland line, and it's held up just above that. So it really slows the drainage from the green area into the canal. If we did that same operation in the wet season, the water couldn't get into the canal from the wetlands and it would start to inundate the roads and other areas. So trying to give some perspective on how the challenges we have to deal with when we operate the system. And if you want to look at how much actual flow goes through the structure, this new structure upgrade, now we can measure it and we know how much flow is actually going through it. So it didn't really come online, that part of it, until just in October. Late October is when the flow rating came on. And on the bottom of the graph here, you can see that the cubic feet per second that go through the structure. You'll see the numbers are in the 40 and 40 CFS range. And in terms of all of our other canals, how much water that is, it's very minor in comparison to, say, what goes through Cocoa 1, which has 1,000 CFS design capacity, or GG 1, which has several thousand CFS. So just to give some comparison there and how much volume and water actually goes through this one structure. Doesn't mean it's not important, but it does, the capacity of it, how much water goes through it, is fairly small in comparison to our other structures. And you can see, if you follow the line, the brown line on the bottom, how close it gets to zero. And we're basically discharging no water by the beginning of December. And then this year, there's only been a blip of flow going through it, maybe January 2nd or 3rd, and then it's been zero since. So showing how much flow actually goes through that. There's other ways that water can move through, groundwater movement and everything, but through the structure itself is fairly limited in the dry season. And then on my last thing on this slide, I know I've been talking on it a little bit here, the natural progression of water levels down. So the blue line here is 2023. You can see no water has been flowing through the structure, but still that water level continues to go down inside the canal with no water leaving. So there's other outlets that water leaves through. There's culverts underneath this road that connect downstream that don't have any control on them, that we don't have, any ability to change or modify water levels to. So just trying to show how we've improved the system, and yet there's still more improvements that could be made in the future. And that's what part of the items that Lisa mentioned on the modeling project will help us look at.
Brad, before you move on, just go back to it. I know you've been on this slide, but please explain what that approximate 1% storm flood elevation is.
Sure. Sorry, I glossed over that one. So that's about your FEMA floodplain elevation. So if you want to look at your 100-year floodplain, that's how deep the water would get if you had that 100-year storm. And it's approximate. So it's so close. It's a foot above the ground, or sorry, only about a foot above the road surface. So, and that takes into account how we operate the canal and the capacity of the canals when all that's modeled. So we have to be careful about how we operate that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so these are our more typical graphs now. I'll roll through these fairly quickly. This is our Golden Gate Canal. GG1 is here on the left, GG4 on the right, and you can trace the water levels as you go throughout 2022 and 2023. You can see the transitions between wet, the pre-storm drawdown at Ian, and then how we transitioned back to dry season after the storm passed pretty much throughout. But the trend away and the takeaway here is that the water levels are following their normal pattern of recession at this point. Cocohatchee Canal, more of the same here. You see the dry season trend towards the top, and then our Cocoa 3. Remember, Cocoa 3 was on the Crew watershed map as one of the outlets. So that this one here, it started at 12 in January, and it's gone down to 10 just without any water going through the structure. So it's just natural groundwater recession. There's more to this than just the water that's moving through the system. Moving to the east here, Faki Union Canal, similar scenario here. Water levels are just about where they need to be for this time of year and are looking good. Henderson Creek, the similar scenario here. You've got your dry season recession starting and definitely picking up its path here in January through February, but the slope of the line is about what it has been in the past. So nothing abnormal is going on. So I'll spend another minute here on this slide talking about the picking and strand operations. So in this time, I took how much water we pumped through the two active pump stations through May 1st through January 1st and totaled that up. And it's about 165,000 acre feet of water that then moved into the green area, during that time frame. In addition to that, there's also direct rainfall that falls on that area. We had an above average rainfall year, but if you total up all the rain and average it out over that whole 30,000 acres that's restored, it'd be about 137,000 acre feet, which is less than the amount of water that we actually pumped into the system. So it's interesting to me to see that we were able to move more water than Mother Nature delivered on top of it, directly, right there. So you can see that restoration and works if you look at some of the hydrographs and the conditions chart where all of those colors were black. So I won't spend too much time here. This is the same graphs as before, basically just showing what the water level is in front of the structure and then how much water is actually pumped. So you can see the transition from the low end of the operating range to something in the more medium or high as we transition out of the wet season. But the goal there isn't just to automatically flip a switch, it's to gradually make that adjustment from the wet to the dry to not shock everything and change everything too quickly. And the same story goes with our Merritt pump station. So it is dry season, so we want to talk just a second about groundwater levels. Overall, the trends are about normal for this time of year. The blue line is 2023, the trend, and it's in the green band, which is kind of the middle 50% of the period of record for these wells. So overall, things look okay at this point in time. And then as far as our outlook, the weather forecast, we've had below average rainfall, for the last 4 months. It looks like that will continue potentially through April. But after that, it's unclear. We could go either way, wet or dry or average. There is a change possibly in the La Nina changing to an El Nino, which might have an effect on our rain and climate here. But in the short term, it's the left. So it'll be hot, it'll be sunny, and it'll be nice. So I will close there and happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Brad?
I was hoping for a little more specific on the weather report. Any feeling as to the impact of climate change that we learned from at the symposium that climate change, somebody calculated increased the precipitation of Hurricane Ian by 17%. I have no clue how they calculated that, but question for you is are you seeing on the rains in the summertime any increase in magnitude?
I don't know if I have that answer here today.
Okay.
I haven't seen that.
Anything you're feeling? I mean, are we getting heavier rains when it does rain, or?
I mean, obviously, I believe it's changed. I mean, something's changing, but
Okay.
is it enough to move the trigger one way or the other? I don't know. I know there's folks at the district who are looking at that more
Okay.
specifically and would be probably better suited to answer that, but I can find out some of that and report back to you in the future.
Okay. No, thank you.
I don't see anyone else. So thank you very much, Brad. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, staff report, our monthly financial with Miss Candy Heater.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. The monthly financial report in your packet is through the month of December. So through the month of December is 25% of the year that's completed, first quarter. The amount of revenue collected thus far, so recurring revenue that's been collected 84.9%, so 85%. So we're on target, we're doing well. Your ad valorem taxes, you've collected 9.8 million out of 11.4 with 1.6 remaining to collect. And as far as the uses of your revenue thus far, there's been 1.9 million spent. There's over 3.8 million obligated. And the remaining amount is about 11.8 million. Of that, 2 million is your reserves. And then the remaining part is your capital, the operations for the remaining 3 quarters of your fiscal years. That includes payment to staff, contracts, et cetera. So overall, you all are very stable and your collections are coming in, according to trend. There's no red flags.
That's good. Did you have any questions, board members of Candy?
So we saw no effect on from Hurricane Ian and those that may have been displaced, or maybe that's coming next in the time to come, that people are deserted their properties or.
So when we will potentially see that outcome is when we get the taxable values July 1, which is a snapshot of what everyone's taxable values were in January. So that's after Ian. So that's when we will more than likely see, the impact to values, taxable values, which
Okay.
then impacts your ad valorem.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Candy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, that brings us to general public comment. Again, this is another chance for the public to speak to the board on anything not covered in today's agenda. So Todd?
Madam Chair, your first speaker is Sean Clem, and she will be followed by Emily Dalto. Reminder to our speakers, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I'm Sean Clem. I'm the research director at Audubon's Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. And I just wanted to come and just thank the district and the board for your support of continuing to look into the hydrologic change at the sanctuary and the support that, you just showed again today for trying to restore some of the habitat and holding the line. In vegetation, vegetation changes on the landscape in light of waiting for hydrologic improvement at the sanctuary. We saw from the storms this year and predictions of climate change that show, increased ET with water loss in our system, that those freshwater wetlands are just going to be really critical for our region's resilience as we move forward. And so the investment that you're making in Crew and in Corkscrew are appreciated. Particularly Chairwoman Roman for coming out and Lisa Keeler and your staff for, working alongside with us as partners and addressing these issues. We're grateful for your support and look forward to, moving forward together with you on this.
Thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Emily Dalto. And at this point, I have no one raising a hand on Zoom. So this will be our last speaker.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Emily Dalto. Also a resident on Longboard Drive, and I'm concerned about what's going on with the canal around GG1. Water management decimated the vegetation and greenery across the canal 4 years ago without informing the residents. My understanding is that it's your easement and not Bear's Paw. I'm sitting here listening to everyone asking for help and funding in regards to the ecosystem. It seems like the residents on Longboat constantly being ignored, and we need your help and we need a resolution now. Another problem that I have noticed over the years is that there's a big erosion taking place on the canal banks. It's progressively getting worse, especially more so after Hurricane Ian. Florida management informed residents back in the day, years ago, that they would, when they installed the weir, that they would control the level of the water to be a little bit more stable. Every day on a daily basis, the water goes up, it goes down, up and down, and slowly, and it's just getting eroded. Unfortunately, I've not kept your promise of regulating the water levels. And it's, like I said, it keeps changing on a daily basis, therefore creating more erosion. I'm asking the board, what can you do to help us with the erosion and also across the canal, because it's your easement. I mean, it's really not Bear's Paw, it's Florida management. So we need help, we need a solution. Everybody else is asking for help and funding and a solution, and we keep getting pushed back year after year after year. We're getting really, tired of it. It's my property, it's my property value. I have to look at it. I have children, I'm raising a family, it's horrible. It really is.
Well, thank you for being here today. And what I'll do is I'll ask Lisa Keeler to set up a time when I can come and meet with you.
Okay.
And I'll actually,
And-
whoever you want, I'll meet with anybody. I have no problems with that. I'll meet with you and we can take a look at what your concerns are.
But are we going to have a resolution? Because
I don't know what the issues are yet until I'm on the ground again and just to see what your concerns are.
same exact concerns as Andrea Trankel had explained a little while ago. Same thing, the greenery across the canal that I have to look at. It's becoming worse and worse by the day. There, I can see right through to the golf course.
We'll go ahead and take a look at it together.
All right, thank
Okay,
you. And
thank
the
you for
and
being
the
here.
erosion across.
You show me anything you want when I'm there. I've been there several times on the boat and everything, so I'll be happy to meet with you.
Right, okay, all right, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Madam Chair, that is all the public comment we have.
Okay, that ends public comment. We have our final board comment session here. Anything, Vice
Nothing
Chair?
more for me.
Okay, okay, I have one thing that I wanted to update you on real quickly. I was out in the Picayune Strand Restoration project with the Corps of Engineers, Steve Basin, the program manager, along with his engineering team. And they are working multiple facets of that project to get it done. It was encouraging. The Southwest Protection Feature, of course, is moving full steam ahead. But in addition, they had the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers heavy equipment team starting to prep the Merritt Canal banks for when the protection feature is done, so they can go ahead and plug fairly quickly. So they're prepping the Merritt Canal for when the Southwest Protection Feature is done. The Southwest Protection Feature is under full construction right now. The culverts going in under 41 in full construction right now. And as soon as they have a large portion of the Southwest Protection Feature completed, we should be able to, or they should be able to finish plugging the Facka Union Canal. So all full steam ahead out there at the Picayune Strand. I'm very hopeful that we'll see this cross the finish line here in the near future, in the next 2 years. I think their targeted completion date is the end of 24, beginning of 25. So I'm very encouraged by that. And I wanted to update the board on that so that you have it if somebody asks you.
Wondering about that, how that was going to.
Well, my concern is we just had Andrew Wolf brief the field station report, and they're replacing parts on the Merritt pump station, right? That hasn't really worked full capacity because we're not done yet. All right. So we need to get it across the finish line so that we can get full restoration benefit out of the Picayune Strand project, but we're on the right trajectory to do that. So just a brief update for you. Okay, is there anything else, board members? All right, with that, our next Basin board meeting is going to be April 28th, back here at 11 o'clock on a Friday. And I really want to thank the district staff and the Basin staff for all of their work to make these meetings go smoothly, and everyone who participated in the meeting and everyone who came here to speak or to present. I really, really appreciate that. And thank you to you, Dan and Andy, for your service on this board. And with that, we're adjourned.